Alright, okay, good evening everyone. Okay, welcome to today's session. Right, so for today's session, kind of gonna keep it short. It's the New Year's Eve, for those of you are celebrating, right? So there are some opportunities over here from the market. So definitely what I'll do is I'll kind of bring those up, okay, and let me just check. Alright, okay, everything is good. Okay, bring those up and then we'll talk about those opportunities, those setups available. Okay, and we'll see if you guys have then any questions. We'll to cover that a little bit. And that's about it, right? We can run this on a week to week basis. Okay. Now, let's get started with the dollar index. So dollar index over here, we are getting a pretty nice little opportunity. The longer term perspective, as of now, what I'm seeing here is that we are expecting eventually more downside, right? To kind of correct this entire diagonal structure over here, we get the break, and of course, the pullback here will indicate more downside, right? Potentially back towards where this previous low is, around the 105, 105.4. Okay. Now, what I would like to see here is, of course, the pullback, okay, potentially towards 108.60. It can go a little bit higher, maybe towards the 618. And of course, in the near term, in the short term, while we are having the kind of Chinese New Year, Lunar New Year, tomorrow and the day after, it doesn't really impact the financial markets, right? I mean, we are looking at global markets. We are looking at international currencies. Not many countries, globally in terms of like Western side, celebrate the Lunar New Year, okay, very extensively. So the markets will generally function as it is, right? Now that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to like glue yourself in the markets and kind of trade it. Really, I always highlight design your trading plan, design your strategies according to your lifestyle, right? So if you're kind of gonna be busy, you want to enjoy the holidays for the next couple of days or take the entire week off, do that, right? You don't need to capture every opportunity in the market. But for those of you who would like to just spend some time, kind of looking at the markets, managing a little bit of a trades here, there are some opportunities on the dollar related ones. Okay. So dollar index, you can see over here, we're looking at short term pullback, right? So that presents a potential opportunity, I would say, this week, to look for the upside, and then if you can't get into the area here, we'll then look for the downside. Okay. And very nicely, if you kind of be very very familiar with some of the setups that we look at, right? We do have this minor low got broken, okay, and then of course price currently is pushing back up, right, and kind of took up that minor high as well. So on the lower time frame, that is already building up a very obvious setup. Okay, I don't trade the dollar index immediately, but that would be translating to euro dollar very nicely. Okay, so euro dollar is kind of like the inverse of it. Okay, so right now what we're seeing here is we have this diagonal, we have a nice little push up. This little push up can be a leading diagonal kind of a structure, right? And if that's going to be a leading diagonal, then of course we can't expect a pullback, right? I mean, the market's currently doing that already. And after which, back towards the 50 and 61.8 area, we do expect one more upside, okay? So in terms of wave kind of pattern structure, right? Oftentimes, if we get a diagonal, okay, you can see this is kind of like the start of the diagonal. Oftentimes, after the diagonal is completed and then we get a true wave pullback, the market tends to actually come back to where the start of the diagonal is, right? So that kind of gives us a primary target we can aim for in the three wave expectation, okay? So longer term perspective on the euro dollar here, we're expecting upside, but in the near term, okay, the pullback phase, again, we can't expect the market to develop in 1 to 3. So if you can get a pullback here, short term, we can look to sell with a final target short term towards 1.0355. Okay, this is actually building up already. I don't have a pending order set yet, but you can see the criteria of the setup based on the SMC condition, right? We have this liquidity sweep, a little bit of a double top structure. Okay, we have this swing low taken out with momentum, very neat. Obviously, we also have this internal order block, okay, with a very obvious fair value gap. So right now the market is still moving lower, right? At some point in time, if it starts to pull back correctively, that's where we can have like swing high, swing low. Then we'll just look for confluences around the fib area, okay, to start looking for downside, okay. So the setup is there, building. I would say if this starts to pull back, based on just some estimation on time, probably gonna be a Thursday setup, right? Because today more or less the market's there. Tomorrow if it starts to pull back and then Thursday it pulls back a little bit more, that will be the trade on Thursday. Okay, so keep an eye on it. I have this flag right now. Okay, if moving forward, the entire setup on the lower time frame H1 starts to build in, I'll be placing the pending orders. Okay. GBP USD kind of similar overall in terms of like what the major pairs are doing. Okay, we're kind of expecting a little bit of pullback here. If I kind of zoom out, right, you can see that GBP USD has been respecting a downward channel for some time, right? This is all the way back in last year September, and just this week, okay, I would say like last week going into like beginning of this week, we got a break out of the channel. Now to me, I don't take trend line or channel, I would say I wouldn't put too much emphasis on them, but you know the thing here is a break doesn't necessarily mean, oh, we're gonna just look to buy. Okay, a break is important, especially after it has respected for some time. But the extra layer of confirmation I always love to see is after a break, what the price would do, right? What pattern you would develop next. If the pullback is corrective, that obviously suggests that the upside probability is going to be higher, right? So this is what we're waiting out for. So the bias here is turning bullish, right? It's indicating that the market may be going up, but the confirmation is obviously a corrective pullback to kind of like, you know, seal the deal, right? I don't have a setup that is really in place right now. If you go down to the lower time frame, you might see very similar have possible setup building into the pound as well, right? You have this liquidity sweep, you have this potentially taken out today. I'm not so much into the pound dollar because I think the euro dollar, it's already giving us a clear setup, right? And understanding market correlation, you don't want to take both, right, in the same direction, right? So for me, I would just focus on the euro because it seems to be, I would say, one step ahead of the pound dollar. Okay, and we are just waiting for the pullback, right? Because all the conditions are there already. All right, so that's on the pound. Aussie dollar, again, very similar. You can see that you have this downward channel, and then recently market broken out of it. Okay, but right now we are seeing this as again a potential start of a leading diagonal. Okay, so if this is going to be a leading diagonal, then of course the pullback here ideally should be in a corrective way, right? Might come down a little bit deeper towards 618. It might even go a little bit deeper, you know, than that, perhaps to retest, you know, areas like this. That's the possibility. But overall, I would say we are potentially focusing on this structure right now. Okay. So again, if you can get a nice little three-wave correction, right? The key area here would then again wait for some sort of a setup. Okay, and then we'll take the trade on the lower time frame to the upside. Okay. This one here, I'm not so keen in the sell. Again, same reason, right? The major pairs are more or less correlated. The euro dollar is definitely cleaner. Okay, if you look at Aussie dollar, we have a little bit of elements, you know, if you take it here. But again, if I do a quick comparison to the euro dollar chart, right, this looks way cleaner, right? Compared to like trying to force something in. Okay, so for that reason, I'm just gonna stick to euro dollar as my primary focus on the short term sell side. Okay. Then we have dollar CAD. Dollar CAD right now is really just in the major consolidation phase. I'm just not gonna pay too much attention on this. We'll just stay neutral, okay, and see how the market is gonna develop from there, right? So nothing much really on the dollar Canadian, right? Then we have the dollar yen. Last week we had a very nice little short trade, right? On dollar yen. Pretty decent as well. Of course, it went a little bit more than our initial target, right? Because we're looking at like simple 1:2, so we're kind of capitalizing on just like the swing low. Okay, now it went a little bit more. You can potentially catch like almost close to like 1:7. Yesterday, kind of look at it. But then after that, it kind of reversed pretty quickly, right? But again, I don't go for like super extended risk to reward ratio. Usually 1:2, great, right? We get out and then look for the next opportunity. So update on dollar yen, right? We had this pushback up, pretty impulsive overall. So that led me to think that okay, instead of this as a one leg here and then this is a correction and this is another push, right? There is the possibility where this entire leg here is one. That's where you can see wave A. And then this impulsive push can be the start of a 3-wave pullback. Okay, so short term, we may see a little bit upside, maybe towards like 156.90. Okay, and then after which I would still maintain an overall bearish view, right? So that will be A, that will be B, then that will be a C. Okay. So if you go down to the lower time frame, right, at this moment I don't really have a nice little setup. Okay. We can say that alright, that might be considered a kind of liquidity sweep, right? However, for that to be a liquidity sweep, price needs to take out the swing high. Okay, as a layer of like confirmation, right? And my view here is when price take out this swing high, right? So just bear in mind, right? This is around 156.60. Okay, if I go back to the higher time frame, 156.60 is here, right? It's already very, very close to 618. So what could happen over here, right? If you do a little bit of projection, is price doesn't need to break that. First, it can actually pull back and then break that, right? To give us that confirmation that, okay, this is a liquidity sweep, that's a break of structure, but by that time, we may have already completed a 3-wave structure, right? So that's the part where I'm not going to be like really looking into this buy trade, okay, because based on what we are seeing here, we may not get that opportunity, okay? But I'll be interested to sell if, let's say, this comes back, okay, and then it forms a setup around that key area. We'll be looking to sell it on the lower time frame. Okay, so that's on the dollar yen. Gold is another interesting one, right? So if I zoom out a little bit, okay, we came very, very close to where that previous top is, right? But right now it seems that price is actually respecting number one, a 3-wave Fibonacci area, okay, and of course the channel. Okay, it seems like price is respecting that pretty nicely because we do see that rejection coming down pretty impulsive, right? Okay, so I have this flag. If I bring you to the lower time frame, okay, we have a break of structure, not the most obvious kind of break because it just break it by a little bit, but based on the rules, it's technically still a break of structure. Okay, and then we don't have a liquidity sweep. Okay, so the part here is I did not put a pending order on this because it's not an A plus setup, right? It's not like all conditions are there. It's not like very, very clear. We just have a high time frame of bias, which is important, of course. Looking at downside possibility, at least even for the near term. And then we have a breakout structure. We have momentums of this to the downside. There's some elements of price suggesting that we can look to the sell side of things, but not the best, right? And that's the reason why I don't have the pending. Okay. So I'll give it maybe another day to see how things roll. If this actually pulls back correctively, that might be a possible consideration, right? Then you can see this as some sort of a head and shoulder pattern development as well. Okay. Yeah, so this would maybe give it another day and then we'll see how things go from there. Okay, so that's on gold. Silver here broke that trend line. Okay, so that suggests that potentially this is a three-wave completion. If we can get a corrective move here, we can start to look for sell side, right? Silver, if you go down to the lower time frame, okay, we do have the liquidity sweep here. Okay, and of course, price also took out this low. Okay, so we have the conditions in place. If you kind of put your FIB in from high to low. Okay, 618 can be a 67 here, around $30 and 59 or 60 cents. Can be a pretty ideal spot, okay, to look for a sell, right? Because on a higher time frame, we expect this to come back and retest the low. So this one here, if tomorrow we continue to see some corrective development, we are able to possibly put a sell limit. Okay, given the last piece of the setup is a corrective pull to the upside from a mini swing high, okay, acting as an internal liquidity sweep, and then that can be the setup to sell it. Cool. Yeah, so this is definitely worth noting, right? In terms of silver. Crude oil. Okay, crude oil over here will be neutral for now. Okay, this is coming down pretty impulsively, so overall, probably not gonna do much on this. Suggest to just stay out of it. Wait for things to develop before kind of like deciding on whether to be buying or focus on selling. Okay, so this one will just stay neutral. S&P. Okay, if you have been following the US markets, Nvidia did a major correction to the downside. Okay, about 16% of a pullback, right? Which is pretty significant in a short term like that. Okay, and it's because of some of the AI disruption from China. However, volatility like that in the equities market is not new. Okay, so if again my take here is that if you're trading the specific individual stock, right, then obviously you need to be on the ball to really read the market, understand the development of the space, the industry, as well as the individual companies, right? But if you're looking at the index, right, yes, okay, some of the top tech companies play a major part on the index, but you wouldn't want to really be too fearful if you're looking at index, because of one stock or because of one piece of news, and then you go into a panic mode, right? So obviously you can see like this week S&P started pretty impulsive, right? But as of today, it kind of retraced back about 50% of it. Okay, so understand that such volatility, what I will bring it is that it's not new. Okay, even in the past, you can see here, one day drop, couple of days pull back, and then coming down and such. Okay, so what I would like to kind of suggest over here is really give yourself that room for the equity side, which means why I'm not looking at lower time frames. I don't, number one, obviously I don't have that capacity to like go into individual stocks, right? I don't really actively trade the indices as well. My primary focus is still very much on the in terms of like currencies. Okay, but the US side of things, I look at it more of like a longer term kind of investment portfolio, okay, or even kind of like a month-to-month type positions, right? Not so much on the day-to-day kind of intraday trading opportunities. Okay, so that's my take, right? Now for S&P over here, I'm still overall going to be bullish. Okay, while this drop isn't ideal, right? This initial expectation is we want to see this correctively coming back, and then that would really give us a concrete information that the odds of going up is there. Okay, but of course we get a pretty impulsive drop. But the good thing here is price seems to be respecting this key 50 to 618 pullback pretty nicely so far. Okay, now that doesn't mean that the correction is done. What can happen over here is this can do a pullback, okay, and can still do one more drop before maybe the pushback. Okay, so bear in mind that from wave theory expectation, we always anticipate a three-wave development. Now, while market doesn't necessarily need to give us a three-wave, we always want to have some sort of expectation to help us in our analysis, to help us in our planning. Okay, so this is very, very clearly just a one push down, right? So that opens up the possibility of this being a correction and one more drop before the eventual upside, right? If that's going to be the case, right? So we're going to take it, as it goes, right? You don't need to focus too far ahead of things, right? So as of now, I would say that if this continue to just develop correctively, there's a good odd that will drop one more down to the downside before going higher, right? So that's something that can happen. Okay, so just bear in mind as you're looking at US equities in general in terms of S&P. Okay. Then we have pound yen. Okay. So pound yen over here, I'm currently neutral, but I'm leaning towards bearish bias, right? I would really want to just see how price is going to react off this level. Okay. Currently I'm still seeing this as a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then this is a pullback. Again, as I say, this can still come back down correctively, one more push up before the drop, and the whole structure is still valid. Okay, so then you have your A here, or maybe a 1, okay, and then this is a ABC, so that can be a 2 or a B, right? And then you have your third wave down. Yeah, so this one here, I'm just gonna give it some time because we have some reaction here, but this reaction doesn't really give us any sell trade opportunity anyway at this moment, right? In terms of the yen pairs, I would say odd yen may be a little bit neater. I think you can see very, very quickly the difference is this leg down is impulsive. Okay, GBP, JPY, that leg down is not that impulsive. Okay, so subtle context like that will help to filter out a little bit of things, right? So for me, odd yen becomes a little bit clearer to the downside. Okay, and what I'm looking at here is that this is a 1, 2, 3, right? Then this is the first leg down. This can be an expanding flat. Okay, and for that reason, I'll be expecting at least some sort of a move back towards this low. Okay, so that led me to the view of a bearish bias. And of course, if you go down to the lower time frame, okay, we do have the setup here, right? We have a liquidity sweep. We have this very clean break. Okay, obviously we would love to see some sort of a corrective pullback towards the area of entry. Okay, you need to look at this also because if let's say tomorrow the market break this, you probably just readjust this a little bit because I think overall direction you're still going to be focusing on sell side. Okay, we just probably need to adjust a little bit in terms of the fips and things like that. Okay, so this one is this is a pending order that I've really placed, right? So I'll just keep track of it, manage it accordingly. Okay, and then we have GBP AUD. Okay, GBP AUD short term bullish. So again, you can see how this build up, right? Okay. Crawl pattern often suggests a reversal. So we get a very nice impulsive move. If you can get a correction pullback, obviously we can still consider one more move back up. But we'll need to wait for the correction. Okay. In the meantime, this might also build into a short-term sell. Okay, a short-term sell if you get the setup built in. I mean, it's a little bit too early to talk about it, right? But you can see how things would eventually build into a possible sell trade. Okay, you have this as a potential liquidity. You have this as a break of structure, swing high, swing low, pull back, short-term sell. Okay, but it's a bit too early, as I say, right? We'll see. Okay, cool. And then the last one here in my list. Okay, the last one here in the list is BTC. So this is pretty clear in terms of like structure, right? What we have is a nice little push up, breaking of that, and then we have a 1, 2, 3 coming into key areas, and then we have a decent reaction as of now. Okay. So if you're into cryptocurrencies, right, I think you can go down to the lower time frame. Okay. And this one here, you don't really need a liquidity sweep in a way, right? Because we have a higher time frame alignment in terms of the overall direction. Okay. What you would look out for is this is your swing low. Okay, and of course, tentatively, this is your swing high. So if you can get a corrective pullback, that can be your buy setup. Okay. We are not taking a counter trend kind of setup, so we don't really need that liquidity sweep from the SMC perspective. Cool. Yeah. Yeah, so that's on the Bitcoin perspective. Okay. Again, I'm not really into like short-term trading the crypto side of things. So I'm just having this because again, I know some traders do look at Bitcoin and just want to share my point of view. Good. Yeah, so yeah, in general, these are the things to look out for. Okay, so I would say like primarily the focus are the ones that I've tagged over here. Okay, we have the euro dollar, okay, short term to the downside. We have the silver, okay, potentially to the downside as well. Then Aussie yen here in the sell side, right? So right now, those are the three top picks for this week. What's my view on the euro AUD? Let me see. I would potentially focus on sell side. Okay. Overall. Okay. I would see it this way. As long as price is still below this swing high, you want to look out for sell opportunity, right? Or wait for some sort of a indication that price would reverse. Okay, so how would that look out to be? If you go down to the lower time frame, you either want to wait for some sort of a double topish structure, right? In terms of like SMC, we call it liquidity sweep, but it's basically a double topish structure, a break of neckline. Okay, that will give you that confirmation that price have been topish, and then wait for the pullback to sell it. Okay, what can happen over here is also a crawl. Okay, if it develops a crawl, that's also a setup. Can understand, right? So euro AUD here, in the shorter term, okay, look for a topish formation. Okay, then that would build in as 1, 2, 3. Right, so that's my take on euro AUD. Cool. Oh, good. Any other things? What about Aussie New Zealand? Okay, this is really corrective overall. We are testing the 618. I would say this falls very much like dollar cat, right? You can see that this is like in a huge consolidation since like the start of the year, or like since the late of last year. Really not ideal to be trading in this kind of environment, right? Because whether you are buying or selling, you're just gonna see your trade, going into profits, going into drawdown, going into profits, going into drawdown. And it's not really going anywhere. Okay. So things like that I would tend to avoid. But obviously, if you go like higher time frame, um, there is that good possibility we'll see this coming back, to retest some of this low. Okay, but that's on a higher time frame. Okay, so if you're kind of like looking at a shorter term trade opportunity, these are examples where I'll just avoid entirely. Cool. Okay. Yeah. So I hope today's session here is clear. Oh, one more, right? Euro yen. Let's see. Hey, my primary take right now, very obvious to me, is this seems to be building some sort of a bigger WXY structure. Okay. Kind of align with the overall yen family as well, where we can expect more downside, right? Okay. So this is the analytical view I'm gonna put it in. Okay, Euro yen. So bearish bias. On a lower time frame here, I mean, it's very similar to odd yen, right? If you kind of look at this too. The subtle difference is, of course, odd yen here has a very impulsive push. Okay. Euro yen didn't really have that impulsive push relative to like the previous low, but it still carries a little bit of the element, right? You can see that. Okay. Yeah. So I think overall yen seems to be down. Okay, the yen pair seems to be down. You need to just pick the focus of like which pair. Okay. So yeah, I think euro yen it's still bearish overall. Okay, and then of course you would then see it as after this move to the downside, there's a good possibility this will start going up. Okay, so that's on euro yen. Pound, euro pound. Okay, euro pound here we are still expecting that pullback, right? But we always expect in threes. Okay, so this can be our first push. Okay, if the market gives you a corrective pullback, short-term sell. This will be the short-term target, and then after which look for upside. Yeah, so this one is quite clear, right, in terms of like the direction to be focused. Yeah, so that's on euro pound. Good. Okay, so hopefully that's clear. Those who are enjoying the holidays tomorrow, okay, happy holidays, happy Chinese New Year. Personally, I also be having the holidays, right? But I'll still be looking at the markets. Similar here, updating you guys in the morning as well. Okay. Yeah, that's all from me for today. all the best for this week, and as usual, okay, we'll come back next week and have our weekly routine as well. Okay, so yep, see you guys. Bye.